Hello there. I'm Stephen Hubbard, and this is the beginning of a weekly podcast series that we'll be doing and releasing, taking a look at indie game developers from around the globe. We'll be looking at their current and most recent game project in the lens of game design. We'll talk about what works, what doesn't, what different types of game engines they're using, and maybe even taking a peek at some of their code inside of the game engine that they're using. If you'd like to be a future guest on this podcast, please get in touch with me with either a comment or shoot me an email that's in the description down below. This week, we'll be taking a look at Wesley Orth from the Netherlands and his game Orbin Defenders. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So, without further ado, I bring you Wesley Orth. First, if you could actually just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into game dev.
Yeah, as I said before, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm Wesley. Hi. And I started game development. The first game I made, I was 17 or something, and a lifetime ago, basically. Back then, I wasn't too serious about it. I was just doing it for a hobby, just being self-taught, basically. That started 4 or 5 years ago when I discovered Udemy and Gamedev TV. That kind of gave me the drive to start game development on a serious note.
Yeah.
And I started a practice project called Monument Rancher. A few people who are active on the Facebook group probably remember that. It started as a practice project, but in the end, it kind of like every good indie game developer, you have to overscope at least once. I worked on that for about 2.5 years for practice, and it gave me a lot of programming experience alongside with other experience related to Unity itself and a little bit of 3D modeling, but not much. And after 2.5 years to 3 years, it kind of got to the point where I felt like it would probably finish when I started to grow a giant gray beard and call myself Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah. I feel like everyone has to learn for themselves to overscope a project eventually, where, you know, I mean, I've done it too, where you start a project, you think it's going to take a month, it ends up taking 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Maybe it never even gets finished. And then I think most people start to learn for themselves, like what it actually takes to make a game. So I just released my first Steam game late last year, and it just felt so cool to actually like get something out there that people could buy and enjoy. It felt like a huge like weight had been lifted off my shoulders just to like get something out on Steam with my name on it, sort of thing. So look forward to seeing yours as well.
Yeah, it'll be a while before that happens, but yeah, I can't wait. I can imagine it feels like a major accomplishment.
Feels good.
My game is called Orbin Defenders. There isn't much yet, but in the end, it's going to be. It has 2 main components that feed into each other, basically. I call it the Orbin side. Orbins are basically the towers you create and use during the tower defense match, which is the other side of the game. And yeah, like I said, they kind of feed into each other. During the tower defense matches, you can earn eggs, which you can use to hatch new Orbins. And it's not quite there yet. I mean, the systems work, but I'm currently in the process of 3D modeling. Well, I guess the features for what the game is like. Okay, will it have horns? Yes. Okay, let's add them. Will it have a tail? Yeah. Okay, which one, etc.
It's a tower defense game where you're building up these like resources that are essentially eggs, and then do the eggs act as like towers, or are they units that the player plays to also like defend against waves of enemies?
Currently, I only have I don't have any tower defense gameplay yet, but basically what you do during the tower defense gameplay loop is you have a resource called food, which is basically used to place new towers and upgrade towers, and the towers are basically these Orbins here. Think of the food as like gold to buy towers and other kinds of tower defense games.
Cool.
And when you beat a wave, you have a small chance to gain an egg, which will be this resource here. And you can use these eggs to exchange for traits to put in your lab. I'll show that in a minute. Or hatch that egg to add another Orbin to your barn, which you can add to your party. And the party is basically like, okay, these 1 to 10 towers I'll take with me in a tower defense match.
It's reminding me, I'm sure there's a lot of differences, but it's reminding me of 2 games that I've played before, which is specifically it's Dungeon Defenders, which is kind of reminding me of that in the sense of like, you know, there's some tower defense mechanics, but you also like have your hero and you're doing some like leveling up sort of abilities. I didn't play a lot of Orcs Must Die. Have you played that one before?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, though I do prefer Dungeon Defenders more.
Yeah, so did I. I played Orcs Must Die for maybe like less than a few hours, but I probably played Dungeon Defenders for, I don't even know, 1 or 2 dozen hours. So I actually put a decent amount of time in that game and really enjoyed it.
My game, eventually I want to capture that feeling of excitement you get when you are not sure what kind of monster or thing you will receive when you perform an action. So if I press hatch, the game generates a monster. And the appearance, while there isn't too much now, like I said earlier, eventually the appearance will be completely randomly generated based on parts I have 3D modeled and added. You can't really see it yet, but it has a cat tail, this one.
Nice.
And so every time you hatch an egg, you get a different one. Then you'll have a barn system. Basically, you can swap them around
cool.
position if you want. Think of this like the boxes in Pokemon games, if you've played any of those.
Yeah, of course.
And if you click one, you can see it pop up and what it looks like.
Walk me through a little bit. It looks like they've got a lot of different traits or special abilities of some kind. It looks like each Orbin has, 6 traits of some kind in the bottom right that I'm seeing. What are those icons?
Each icon has a different, like for example, this one is powerful, which increases base power by 20%. There are 3 categories basically. You have the combat category, which changes how an Orbin functions or influences its stats somehow to make it, specialized in killing enemies. You have the simple ones that increase stats, but you also have others that change how an Orbin works. So for example, this one has a 10% chance to stun damage enemies. And this one, which I find, I love puns, so
yeah.
So for example, when you get an egg during the end of a wave, the next wave you deal triple damage. It's rare, but when it happens, it's a nice bonus, and then you can, as a player, you can be like, okay, do I want to add this one to sometimes get an unconditional damage boost, but rarely, or do I want something that's more reliable but requires some change or whatever? Then you also have the auras tab category, and this is all about auras. So basically, any other Orbin that is within range will get some support, or certain enemies will be affected. So for example, all enemies in range of the Orbin that has this particular trait will take 50% more damage. And again, it's all unbalanced at this point. It's all theory. There's the lab, there's also support, but that's kind of
cool. That's a ton of abilities, by the way.
Yeah, there are 60 in the game, and each Orbin can have 6.
Walk me through one more time. What's the difference between like a tower and an Orbin? Like when the actual tower defense game is set up, and maybe this is my disconnect and what actually is eventually going to be the game. When you're going through the actual game, where do the Orbins go?
The Orbins are basically the towers.
Okay, so are the Orbins going to be like stationary towers essentially? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably said that 10, 15 minutes ago, but it's now finally clicked for me.
Yeah, no, it's fine. My explanations sometimes leave a bit to be desired.
No, not at all. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think my disconnect is in my brain. I was envisioning all of these Orbins as something separate to the towers, but just having the Orbins actually be the stationary towers makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's how you can customize them. For example, if you exchange an egg, you get these traits and they get thrown inside your lab. As you can see, I have several quantities of traits. And those that you have in your lab, you can exchange them whenever you want, basically. So you have a sense of customization when it comes to how your Orbins function, but not what they look like, because that's the exciting part. If you don't like an Orbin, you can get an egg and swap it around and stuff. If at some point enough players are like, you know what, I really want to change how my Orbin looks instead of randomly getting one, then I might consider somehow give the players the ability to customize the appearance of an Orbin. But I'm kind of in the camp of I like the fact that the Orbins are completely random and I can't change their appearance. I would need to get a new egg and maybe I find something better.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too, at least for like the MVP first version of the game. I got to imagine keeping it static and that the players can't change the appearance is kind of cool, because that way it kind of encourages the user or the player to like keep building Orbins until they get an Orbin that they just really like the visual appearance of. If you can get any Orbin and change an Orbin to look kind of however you want, that in some way defeats the purpose of like the cool randomness of what it looks like. How are you doing that? Actually, can you talk about that for a moment? Like, how are you going about doing the random sort of procedural generation of the Orbins? Because there's a lot of different ways that you can do any kind of sort of randomness. Can you talk a little bit about that? Bonus points if you can actually pull up the script and talk about it a little bit and how you have it set up. Awesome. This is sick. Let's talk about this for a second and how you have randomly determined, what Orbins look like.
So basically, when you hatch an egg, let's see, it looks at, it goes through several of the methods from this script. Perhaps not the best way to handle it, but whatever, it works. So.
Yeah, well, that's why I want to just chat about it, just because I'm curious, because any sort of like, whether you want to call this procedural randomness or input randomness, any sort of like randomness, like how you're doing with the Orbins, there's a million different ways to do it. So I was just kind of curious about the way you went about doing it.
So basically, an Orbin will have, this is only I've been really thinking about it a lot, and this is the only way I really came up with, probably due to inexperience. So it's probably not the best method to do it, but basically an Orbin will have all its 3D models, its features basically on it already, but disabled. So they are invisible and, they don't actually need any computing as far as I know. And then when you hatch an Orbin, it determines if it has horns, if it has a tail, and stuff, and more that will eventually be added.
So each one of these methods, whether it's like eyes, horns, tails, and whatever else you have, are you just putting them all in like a starter awake method and then just kind of going from top to bottom and randomly putting them in? Do you have like one of these methods that kind of starts the process and then you just chain one after the other from a different class? Yeah, like right there. So when you hatch the egg, you just kind of go from top to bottom and just kind of go through each individual method to randomly choose what the Orbin looks like. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that is how I'm doing it currently. If I get enough features, I am planning to basically let a method handle the question, like, okay, these categories, if multiple are active at the same time, the models might clash with each other. So it's like, okay, which of these will be active? Stuff like it'll get a bit more complex than this, but basically it checks each individual category, and then see if it's active or not, or in some cases it will always be active, and then after that it'll be like, okay, which of these um, assets that are in the list will be chosen. It's all random, and then based on which one is chosen, it'll activate that one, so that one will show.
I think the core game loop is really exciting. Like if this game existed today, like I would go download it and buy it on Steam for sure. Because this sort of game is always really exciting to me. If it was well put together and well executed, the core game loop of like I would almost say to me, now that I understand the core game loop and the game design, the hook to me, where it differs from other tower defense game, is that you kind of also have this monster collection sort of feel. And so the player not only, unlike games like Dungeon Defenders, or specifically, like let's use Balloons as an example. Every single time you want to load up a new game of Balloons, you have your sort of towers that you've maybe collected over the course of the game. So you have your, jet fighter or something like that you're excited to play. But the jet fighter, the next time you close out the game, is gone. The hook of this game to me seems like this tower defense game with this monster collection sort of hook, that the player is really, really excited to get like a new monster. Just like Pokemon or Digimon, or you collecting a Yu-Gi-Oh card or something like that. The core gameplay, as long as that's executed in a decent and a fun sort of way, the player is excited to load up Orbin Defenders again because they're excited to get like their next monster. And any sort of monster collecting game, a lot of the appeal is like, oh, what's going to be my next monster? And I'm excited to get it. And oh, cool, I got a really rare monster that looks really cool. This is what I've been after for the last, several days that I've been playing this game. So all of that sounds really cool and exciting to me as like the core main hook and what differentiates Orbin Defenders from other tower defense.
Exactly. I did want something that makes it stand out, and I'm a big fan of those monster catching games.
Sick. That sounds awesome, man. I'm really excited to see more about that project. Thank you so much for joining me. I will keep in touch. I'll make sure all the links in the descriptions of everything we talked about are in the description down below. Do you have any words of wisdom on the way out for the audience?
In the beginning, learning to program can be difficult because it requires a unique mindset. So don't feel discouraged if at the beginning it doesn't click. Keep at it slowly, take one step at a time until it clicks, and then become better, I guess. I bumped the last part, unfortunately.
No, that was beautiful. Chef's kiss. Mwah. There's nothing, I don't know if there's anything in my life that's been as satisfying as game development. It's hard, but once you kind of get over the hump and see your progression day by day and week by week, if I can go back and look at the type of Unity developer I was, a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the amount of progress that I've made just by sticking with it and working on it over time is pretty incredible. And I'm excited to see, where Orbin Defenders lies, and we're excited to follow your progress.
Yeah, I'll be sure to keep posting.
Yes, hopefully this is a little bit of motivation for you to work hard and put a lot of time into Orbin Defenders, because it looks like a pretty big scoped game, and I'm excited to follow your progress.
Yeah, progress will be slow at the moment because I'm both watching Gamedev TV Blender courses while applying that knowledge on my own 3D models for the game. So it's kind of slow going at the moment, but like any skill, eventually you'll get better and things go faster.
Are you taking a lot of Grant Abbott's courses, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it is from Grant Abbott. It's the one with the low poly dinosaur as the cover.
Oh, yeah, I think
it's the first one, the beginner course.
Yeah, Grant is awesome. I'm sure I absolutely love his Blender courses. He does them in a really nice, calming way. I kind of call him the Bob Ross of Blender, because he has that really calming, natural voice, but done in just such a nice, descriptive way that's really calming and relaxing to listen to, while also being extremely educational.
Definitely. I sometimes have a bit of trouble focusing on keeping my focus, but yeah, if I watch his courses, it's quite easy to follow.
Cool, man. Well, hey, thank you again so much for being my first official podcast guest, where I start with Gamedev.tv students. If you yourself are listening to this podcast and you would like to be my next guest, just like Wesley was today, and talk about your recent game dev type project, I would love to chat with you about it. Get in touch with me. I'm Stephen Hubbard. Wesley, thank you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.
See you later.